Hello and welcome to another episode of the Men for Life podcast. I'm Sean Corcoran, the CEO of Men for Life, where our mission is to empower men to be active participants in the pro-life movement. Today, I'm excited to have as our guest Reg Platt. Reg is the coordinator for Project Joseph, a men's healing from abortion retreat in Dallas, Texas. How are you doing today, Reg?
I'm doing wonderfully on this Feast of St. Joseph.
And we were talking before the recording, this was not designed to have Project Joseph on the Feast of St. Joseph, but that turned out to be the day we were able to get our schedules together and record. So I think that's some divine intervention there.
Yeah, well, he takes care of himself, and he's got God's ear, so I'm not too worried about it.
That's right. Reg, you have a fascinating story. In parts, it kind of echoes my story, but I love the way you tell it. And so if you don't mind, I'm just going to let you go ahead and tell your origin story as it is.
Okay. Well, I started off, it starts in April of 1976. I had gotten married. My new wife and I were brand new newlyweds, and we both worked in theater. And so I had a chance to, I'm off telling this story really well now, aren't I? Oh, anyhow, what happened is that at our wedding, little beknownst to us, that we had a little stowaway, and didn't find out about it until a few weeks later. My wife then and I thought that she couldn't have children. She'd had an abortion when she was 16, and it was back when it was illegal in Texas before Roe versus Wade. It was a saline injection, and she thought that it had sterilized her because she had not gotten pregnant since and didn't bother with any type of contraceptions. So I married her anyway because I loved her. And when she turned up pregnant, I was delighted. I hadn't expected it, and to find out that we were going to have a child, it gave me great joy to know it. Didn't last long because, you see, she was an actress, and she had accepted a role over the summer as a dancing Indian princess maiden in an outdoor drama. And unfortunately, you can't be a dancing Indian princess maiden when you are 6 to 4 months pregnant, which she would have been during that time. So she took me aside and she said, "We need to talk," which meant I need to tell you I'm getting an abortion. There wasn't really any discussion about it. Inside, I was screaming, "Please don't do this." But on the outside, I said, "Okay, darling, it's your body, it's your life. You go ahead. I will support whatever you decide." And which was actually my coward's way of just backing out of any responsibility for it. At the time, I was 19 years old. She was 23. And I drove her to get the abortion and paid for it, and then took her home. And that was just about the last time we discussed it. And over the summer, she got in this play. I actually got cast in it too. But I was having bouts of depression and fits of anger. I had a real hair trigger temper on me from that had. Well, I've always been kind of a little hot-headed, but it had gotten worse because I had this tremendous, overwhelming sense of grief. But because I was in a cohort of pro-abortion people, I didn't make the connection with the abortion being the source of any of this. I mean, I thought, how could it? It was legal. It was her choice. I had nothing to do with the decision. And so I was disconnected from it in my head. I rarely even thought about it. But still, there was the depression and the heartache and the grief. And because I couldn't place the source of it, I thought I was crazy. And so I actually got to the point where I tried to kill myself that summer. Never told her about it, but I was in the bathroom with the hot water running, and I had the razor blade in my hand and my wrist open, and I got as close as to actually touching the blade to my wrist. It would have just been a simple movement. And, locked in the bathroom, it would have been too late for anybody to do anything. But instead, I made eye contact with myself in the mirror. And what I saw appalled me. I hated that guy, that weakling, that coward, that frankly despicable person. I hated him like he was a murderer, which he was. But because I'd had that separation between him in the mirror and myself, I suddenly was able to make a connection that I try to have with everybody I meet now. That I made eye contact with myself, and deep inside, I saw the Christ within, who's within everybody. He saved my life by showing up at that point and saying, "You can't do this. I love this man." And so I put the blade down, and I've never attempted suicide again. It didn't help the pain and the grief and the depression go away, and it didn't help the confusion at all. But it made me recognize that Christ is in everybody, and even in me, which I had lost complete sight of. Well, after the summer was over, we started fighting. Actually, we started fighting well before the summer was over. I had done it. I'd gone along with it because I knew if I'd stood in her way and said, "Please don't do this," I would have wrecked our marriage. She was an ardent feminist, ardent young feminist, and she would have just as soon left me as not get that abortion and that role. And the irony of it all was that everything that I sacrificed for that with that abortion was worthless, because our marriage fell apart nastily within 6 months. I mean, the center would not hold. It was like a tornado. Everything was going every which way. And there were resentments and hatred, actual real hatred had spawned between us. And so I actually wound up living in my car for a while. I couldn't hold a job for more than 3 months at a time. I did a lot of drugs, smoked a lot of weed, dropped acid when I could get it, snorted cocaine, always my friends, never my own. I was the worst type of drug abuser. I was a mooch. And I started sleeping around with other women, whether they were married or not. I even got involved with the wife of a friend, because I'd lost complete respect for marriage, because mine had been so brutally shattered. And then she came to me, and I said, "Reg, I need your help. I'm pregnant." And I said, "Okay, let me see what we can do." So, by that time, my heart was just a stone in my chest, and I wasn't able to go on. And so I took her to the abortion clinic, and just cold as I could be, just took her there, and I sat and I waited in the same waiting room I'd been in for the first abortion, and I felt nothing, absolutely nothing, complete heart of stone. And when she was done, I took her out, took her home, dropped her off, and not long after that, I decided I've got to get out of Houston. So I packed up my bags, and I went to Dallas by way of a side trip in San Antonio at a Christ of the Hills monastery, which was a whole nother story. So it was not a legitimate monastery, but I spent some time there. And then I made it to Dallas, and I discovered that once you get into a new place, new people, new place, you don't have to face the same things over and over again. And the first thing I unpacked was my troubles, as they go where you go. That's what makes them yours. And so I remarried, this time a much older woman. She was 8 years my senior, and I think that she wanted children. And this is the time when we found out that I wasn't able to give her children. I had certain medical problems that had developed, some of them possibly due to my drug use and abuse. And so she didn't get pregnant, and she started to step out on me. She was, the first time was with a friend of mine. And over the course of the next 7 years while we remained married, she must have stepped out on me about a dozen times. And I had no pride at that point. I figured I deserved this, because still I had the grief, the depression, the anger, especially with myself. And I figured this is nothing more than I deserve. And finally, when we broke up, I started going to therapy, and I found a therapist who possibly the very best thing he did for me during the entire time was he said to me, "Tell me what your perfect woman would be like." So I said, well, she's got to be smart, she's got to be pretty, she's got to have a sense of humor, she's got to be kind, she has to be tolerant of me and my picadillos. And I just described the most perfect woman in the world. And he said to me, okay, now tell me, what would a woman like that want with a man like you? Well, I fired him. But not before we had discussed maybe the source of some of my problems. Because I went to him because I was depressed and grief-stricken and all the other things that I just could not get rid of, all the baggage that I carried with me. And I said to him, now, I did have an abortion many years ago. Do you think that would have anything to do with it? And he went, no, don't think so. Abortion is perfectly normal these days. It's legal in all 50 states. I don't think that's the source of your problem. Well, he was absolutely no help beyond that. But God gave me the grace one day. One day about 15 years after that abortion in 76, I was alone and I was thinking, I should have a 15-year-old child right now. And then it hit me, and it was overwhelming. I had the great sense of shame that I had not even raised a finger to help that child. And I began to weep. God gave me the grace to recognize that I had, in fact, killed my only child. And it broke my heart. But this time, it broke a heart of stone. And God was able to put a heart of flesh in there, which was the start of my healing. See, after my second marriage broke up, I decided, okay, that's it. I've married 2 actresses. I'm not making that mistake again. And then I met my real wife, my sacramental wife, Susan. And she's an actress, of course. And she has been such a support for me. We're going to be married 31 years in May. And she was very supportive of me. I started getting involved in pro-life stuff, and mostly through her prodding. She had signed up to be part of the 40 Days for Life campaign here in Dallas. 13, 14 years ago, maybe longer. But we had been at the Bishop's Pro-Life dinner here, and we heard the bishop speak, and it was just overwhelming. We were taken in by the pro-life message, and I'd seen Abby Johnson, and just decided, okay, this is it. We're going forward with this. And I thought, well, I must be healed, right? I'm doing pro-life stuff. I'm making up for the terrible thing I did. And I still had some depression about it, bouts of grief, but they were better because I was on the right path. I was healed now. And so I was invited to become part of Rachel's Vineyard. You know about Rachel's Vineyard? They're all over the country. Founded by Teresa Burke and her husband Kevin, and it was great. I thought, well, I don't really need this because I'm healed now. So I went to go take part of it because I knew that I should learn about it so I could tell people who needed it about it, so we know what I was talking about. Well, I needed it. It helped me in so many ways. I was able to connect with my child, my lost child. And suddenly that child was not something that happened way in the past, but someone whom I'd lost. I prayed to the Holy Spirit who let me know about who that child was. And he revealed that it was a girl. And I named her Elizabeth Dolores because Elizabeth was her mother's middle name, and Dolores because the whole thing made me sad. But I thought, this is good. This is good. Now I'm healed, certainly. This has helped me recognize certain things about myself and about my situation. This is everything I should need. And then they suggested to me that perhaps I should be part of this new thing they were starting called Project Joseph. Well, I didn't think I needed anything on Project Joseph. It was designed for men only, by men, strictly confidential. And I thought, well, I'm not sure I really need that. I've been through the successful Rachel's Vineyard, But I'll partake in this. I'll be part of it. I will learn about it so that I can tell people who need it all about it. And it was set up by Eileen Kuhlman, who is the director for the Healing After Abortion Ministry for the Catholic pro-life community here. And she didn't really think we needed something for men. You know, men aren't the ones who go through the procedure. Men aren't the one who have a life torn out of them. She figured not necessary, but she's trained as a chemical engineer, so she was going to do an experiment with this and find out if it was something we needed.
Can I stop you real quick? At that time, were there men going through the Rachel's Vineyard retreats?
Yes. Well, Rachel's Vineyard retreats are available for men and women. It's primarily aimed at a woman and her healing. And because of that, it doesn't deal with certain aspects that a man goes through in a loss of an abortion.
But Eileen was familiar with men going through the Rachel's Vineyard retreats?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. In fact, she was in charge of it when I went through
Okay.
the Rachel's Vineyard there. And she said after we were done that, yep, the experiment proved that we indeed need this, because what it taught me is that there are aspects that Rachel's Vineyard doesn't touch on because it's geared primarily for women. It doesn't deal with the loss of fatherhood, the damage that's done to fatherhood, about how a man is damaged as a husband or a potential husband, partner, and the damage that's done to his manhood itself by this horrible occurrence. And so we've been working with Project Joseph ever since. It's by men, it's for men, it's completely confidential. It's necessary because with 66 million abortions in the U.S. since Roe versus Wade that we know of, that means there are 66 million men who have lost a child to abortion. And there's a survey put out by Healing After Abortion, which says that 71% of the men that they interviewed in the survey said that they had a negative impact on their life through the abortion, ranging from just occasional depression to almost psychotic episodes, and that they didn't talk with people about it. They would occasionally tell a friend about what was going on, but they tended not to talk about it with their priests or pastors or any religious advisors that they had. Counselors and therapists, they tended to avoid it because it's just a painful subject. It's something that men push down and sit on. And so for the last 10, going on 11 years now, we have been working and perfecting Project Joseph. Project Joseph, it's my mission now. When I was a young man with an abortion in my past, fresh, and even 10 years out from it, I had nobody I could talk to about it. I had no place to go to deal with the things I was feeling. And it's not like that anymore. I am working to help the men who are in the position I was so that they don't have to carry that burden all that time. Because it's a horrible burden. Any man who's ever had an abortion, except for the really, truly narcissistic and sociopathic, have regrets about an abortion in their past. I mean, I know I've read on your website that you had one when you were 19, the same age I was. And that, so I know you understand the grief that it brings on. And I'm sure that that is what has driven you to Men for Life and to be such an important part of it. To spread the word for men to support life, because until abortion is eliminated and made completely unthinkable, there will always be a call for Rachel's Vineyard and Project Joseph. And even after abortion is made unthinkable and completely outlawed everywhere, there's still the damage done from the people who had to deal with it in their past. It's a damage that goes away. When abortion goes away, like it went away here in Texas, and there's still people who are just in grief and pain and suffering from it.
Well, and they just arrested that doctor in Texas for having multiple illegal abortion clinics.
Yes, and she was practicing without a license.
Okay, I didn't see that part.
But she probably thought that would keep her off the radar, but no, she, you know, Houston, and it was the center of my experience. My family's from Houston, but I abandoned the city, and primarily it was because of my abortion loss there.
Yeah.
And it apparently has not gotten much better.
So you brought up the support after abortion study with the 71% of men saying, I mean, this is I think it's important to note that that's across ideological lines, whether they are pro-choice or pro-life. That 71% of the men said that they noticed adverse effects in their lives after the abortion. Are you familiar with the study out of Denmark about lost fatherhood that was done?
I have looked at that. I have not had a chance to really study it, but yeah, I heard.
So
Go ahead and.
it's really fascinating on this point because so what they did was, and I can't say that I know this for a fact, but I can say that this is the only thing that makes sense to me, and I'm confident that if I were to look it up, that this is what we'd find. But it must have been because of socialized medicine, they were able to get all of these statistics. So what they did was they looked at 192,000 men who had lost a child, whether it was miscarriage, abortion, stillbirth, terminal illness after birth, and studied the mental health impacts. And then when you take out of that I believe it was somewhere around 8,500 men who had lost a child to abortion, you have two different groups, about 7,500 that were within the first 13 weeks, and then the remainder after week 13. And what they found was that of these men, there was a 4.5 times, up to 4.5 times more higher likelihood of seeking mental health professionals. Above 70% higher likelihood of being on antidepressants, anti-anxiety medications, prescription sleep aids. And so what's really cool about this study is that it's not a voluntary study, right? It's not like 192,000 men volunteered to provide information. It's just because of socialized medicine and the data that they keep, that they're able to look at this. So this isn't people identifying as pro-choice. This isn't people identifying as pro-life. This is just men who have lost a child to abortion. And so I think that, to me, I feel like that drives home the point even more than a self-reported study, because it's just real. Like you said, it's raw data. And so I think that if anything, that supports the premise of the support after abortion study on the mental health impacts of abortion on men. And you list on the Project Joseph website um, a lot of the same symptoms and behaviors after abortion that that the support after abortion, and I mean, it's pretty widely known by people who are studying this, excessive anger, anxiety, panic attacks, mood swings, low self-esteem, insomnia, addiction, violence, alcohol and substance abuse, promiscuity, so many behaviors and symptoms of behaviors that come from losing a child to abortion. What do you
I've
see?
had people,
Go ahead.
well, I have had people tell me that those symptoms could be from anything. And I agree. Those symptoms can be caused by any number of things. But if you know there's an abortion in your past and you have these symptoms, then that makes it the most likely culprit.
Yeah, 100%. I had somebody tell me yesterday that I would have ended up as a meth addict whether the abortion had happened or not. And maybe, but what I do know is that when I was in counseling, when I was in treatment, my counselors did the opposite of what your therapist did. And when I got through my story and I got to the point of the abortion, they stopped me and they said, "Hey, let's sit on this for a minute," because in my life, nothing else happened as a precipitating event prior to me going downhill. It was clearly objectively, when you look at it, point A, point B. Point A is the abortion, point B is a 7-year meth addiction, homelessness and unemployment, overdose, and nothing else happened to precipitate that. So yes, while it certainly is possible that I could have gone through life normal and ended up addicted to methamphetamine, that's not what happened. And for someone to say that these symptoms, I mean, it's just discrediting the science and statistics, because it's easy to say, well, no, that's not the cause. Then it's easier to do that than it is for pro-choice people to accept that it does have a negative impact. What do you see with the men who go to Project Joseph retreats as far as how they are impacted personally?
Okay. It's difficult to get into specifics because we do have the confidentiality promise that we make to them. But I can tell you that the men who come to us are feeling the loss deeply, and they don't know why for a lot of reasons. They approach us because they know they've had an abortion and they know it wasn't right, and they reach out for help. And that's actually the hardest step in the process of Project Joseph, is them picking up that phone and calling our helpline and talking to me about what's gone on. Many of them are bad dads. Like, they've had children since then, and they have not been as attentive to them as they could be. They love them, yeah, but they're not sure what to do about them. And some of them have lost any faith in women at all, because the woman who had an important part in their life took something else important away, with or without their consent. When every man has a story, and each story is unique in its particulars about when he met her, when this happened, what they talked about, how they discussed it. But when you get down to the core, every man is suffering from a sense of loss, a sense of unworthiness, because his manhood has been damaged. A man is supposed to be at least three things. He's supposed to be strong, he's supposed to be brave, and he's supposed to be true. An abortion takes all of that away from him. Abortion makes him weak instead of strong, because he has no legal rights dealing with it. Can't stop it if he wants to. It takes away his bravery because it makes him afraid. I was afraid to deal straight with my with my first wife when she was going to have this abortion. I was afraid to even say, please don't do this. I was afraid to talk with my friends about it and what happened, because I was afraid they'd say, oh, Reg, what the matter with you, man? Are you some sort of Neanderthal chauvinist? And a lot of men dealing with society at large are frightened by the reactions that they could get. And last, instead of being true, it makes a man unsure, because he's lied to every step of the way about abortion and what it is and what it does. But Project Joseph, we try to bring men back to being strong, brave, and true. A man needs to be strong to protect his family, to protect his loved ones. He needs to be brave, to stand up even to his loved ones when he needs to, for what he knows is right. And he needs to be true so he knows what is right. Those three things together are important. They're at the core of being a man. And I'll also say being humble is something that a man needs to learn to be. And by being humble, I don't mean, oh, poor me, I'm such a worm. I mean knowing who he is, who God has created him to be, not blowing it up in his mind like, I'm a superstar, I'm a rock star, so things don't apply to me. Or one of those, oh, I'm so awful, I'm so miserable, nobody loves me and nobody should. Both of those are hubristic acts. A man needs to know who he is honestly. He needs to be honest with himself and with everyone around him and with God. His relationship with God. He needs to know that God is so great and he is so small. Man is so small compared to God, but that is what God created him to be. So he needs to be that the best he can. A man is really only small in comparison to God. How tall a man stands in his society and his family depends on how strongly he can be himself. And that man is not one who stands for abortion. That's a man who doesn't stand for violent behavior or for abuse of alcohol or drugs or abuse of other human beings. We work to help men recognize where these places in them are to be strong, to be brave, and to be true, and reassure them that these are things they can be, because that's what God wants. We start with recognizing the wound. Abortion leaves a wound on a man, and it's a gaping wound, and until it's treated, it stays open, it gets infected, it oozes like a spiritual pus on everything he tries to do. So our first step is to recognize the wound and how we're responsible for it, how it happened, what our part in it was. And comes cleansing the wound, which involves sharing the story with others, recognizing that we're not alone in this experience. Satan wants to take every man who has an abortion and separate him like a sheep from that herd of 100 that the Good Shepherd has. It's to get him away and tell him, you're worthless, you're awful, you're weak, and you're disgusting. And the man, if he's alone, he'll fall for it. Isolation is a horrible thing, and self-inflicted isolation is probably the worst. But all he needs to do is be open to the rescue by that Good Shepherd. That Good Shepherd saved me. I mean, I'm not the hero of this story. The hero of this story is Jesus Christ, because he pulled me through it. He gave me the grace to face what I'd done, to repent of it, and to accept his mercy. God's mercy is a wonderful thing. We've got the Divine Mercy coming up just after Easter here. And it is such a precious gift to all of us. And we can all imitate Christ by being merciful to each other. We've had men come to us and they were blaming God. They were blaming the child, blaming the woman, but mostly blaming themselves. And when they leave, they're able to accept God's forgiveness. They're able to reestablish a relationship with the child they've lost. Because at the moment of conception, a relationship is created between a man and his child. And when that is, when it's lost to miscarriage or sudden death syndrome, SIDS, or to stillbirth, anything like that, it's tragic. But when it's an abortion, it's a deliberate act. There's malice behind an abortion. And it's hard for a man to forgive himself for that. But we get them to finally forgive themselves. Then they will stop going to confession time and time again to try and get cleansed from it. Because if you can't understand that God forgives you, then you're never going to be able to forgive yourself. And forgiving yourself is an important step in redemption. It's realizing that God's mercy is meant for you. God's love is stronger than your fear or your hatred or your resentments. I live with a joy inside of me because of what God has done for me. The source of my joy is knowing that He loves me no matter what. And for that, I'm grateful. And that gratitude makes me want to stay on the right path. And that helps give me the joy. I want every man to be able to find that type of joy. And you're not going to get it poof like that at Project Joseph. But Project Joseph will put you on the right path. It'll get you right with God, get you right with yourself and your child, and show you the straight and narrow that you need to stay on. You got any questions?
I do. So notwithstanding the clear understanding at this point that men can benefit from this program, the going back to Eileen being concerned that it was unnecessary, and then after the first retreat, recognizing that it's absolutely necessary.
She is the biggest supporter now.
So I'm sorry, say that again.
She is the biggest supporter of it right now.
And that's fantastic, because that was going to be one of my questions. Was how did she react after the first retreat? And it sounds like she became very receptive to the idea that a men's retreat is a positive thing. Why is it that men need a program that is just men and is facilitated by men?
There are things men can only tell other men. There are things men can only do for other men. There's a process of going from being a boy to being a man. Women can't do that for a boy. I mean, I was raised by women, so I understand how that works. Men, they had the unique problems that they have with abortion, like we've been going over about loss of fatherhood, loss of manhood, loss of husbandhood. All those things, they need to talk to men who understand their problem. See, all of our team members on Project Joseph have been through the program because they have abortions in their past. So they know what the men coming to us are feeling. and we're able, and makes it easier to guide them on. Now, every time we have a Project Joseph retreat, we have 2 a year, and they're a weekend long, and they're not expensive. Every time we have one of them, I see something new. I learn something new from every time we gather men together to share our stories. I learned something new about my own experience through theirs. There's a power of men coming together. Like, there are things women won't talk about with men or with a man in the group. And likewise, men can't talk about certain things with women because a lot of the things we talk about are women. And not all of them are very flattering, but all of them need to be worked through without the fear of offending a woman. And, Rachel's Vineyard, and we've been doing Rachel's Vineyard for 25 years here in Dallas, and Project Joseph for 10 years now. Rachel's Vineyard is practically perfect for a woman with abortion loss, and very good for men. But as I said earlier, it doesn't touch on a lot of the things that men have. Men need to learn to be men. It's not something that we just do naturally. It's not instinctive. Not being a good husband is not instinctive. Being a good father is not instinctive. These are things that men need to learn from other men who know about them. And sadly, in our world today, we have so many men who've never learned it, because that chain of knowledge, that chance to learn from generation to generation, is so easily broken and interrupted. Wars kill men before they can teach their sons how to be a man. Divorce separates men from their children so they don't get a chance to teach them. Sometimes disease, any number of things can break that chain. And if a man doesn't learn it, he can't pass it on to his children. My father, I love him dearly. May God rest his soul. But he was not able to teach me how to be a man because he himself was a full-grown adolescent. Because his father wasn't able to teach him what he had, because his father had died while he was very young. And he was raised by aunts and grandmothers and things like that. So, I mean, I'm an example of the loss of men helping men, because we need each other to mature in this world and to support each other. The worst thing I think a man can think is that I'm all alone with this problem. This is just me, and I'm the worst. And you'd be surprised how many men carry that thought around with them. And it's just not true.
And it's because men don't talk about it. I mean, it just is. I mean, you and I are talking about it, but that's the reason that I wanted you to join me. And that's the reason that I wanted to start this podcast when I took the position with Men for Life, is because I think it's important to share the stories of how abortion impacts men, so that when someone hears it, they realize that they're not alone. Because I mean, I thought I was alone, and I didn't make the connection either. Like, years of destructive behavior and destroying relationships, and I didn't make the connection, because that wasn't something that I thought I had permission to feel. That wasn't something I thought I had permission to talk about. So when trying to figure out on my own, where did things go wrong, that wasn't where I looked, because I was told, that I didn't have any choice in the matter. It didn't matter. And then I was shown that I didn't have any choice in the matter. And so, what now, right? Like that, I guess I'm not allowed to feel that until I shared about it and somebody else came up and said, "Man, I haven't told anybody this in 20 years, but you just talked about it, so I feel comfortable that you're going to understand what I'm talking about." And they shared, and then it kept happening, right?
Yeah.
And so that it's I think that it's really important that we share these stories, and I think it's really important that that you share your story, and that and it obviously is working. How many men have gone through Project Joseph since in the last 10 years?
We have had uh, several dozen come through. The most we've ever had on one retreat, I think, was 11, which is about the upper limit of what we could handle on one of these retreats. And we'll do it for as few as 3 men. Uh, but the ideal is probably about 6 to 8, because that way everybody gets the proper attention. We're doing it twice a year now, so that we can, help twice as many men as we had in the past. But still, the problem is getting them to step forward and say, "I need help with this." I've been reaching out every way I can possibly think of, and and sometimes it feels like I'm just shouting into the wind. But every once in a while, I'll get a call from somebody who says, "I'm hurting. I lost a child, and I don't know what to do about it. And I want to be there for those men," because that's something that can be taken care of.
Are the men who contact you and who come on the retreat generally men who, and I see it as three camps. You may see way more because of the work you do, but men who either fought against the abortion, so the abortion happened against their wishes, men who, similar to your story, just kind of went along and said, whatever you want, it's your choice. I'm not going to get in the way. And then men who are more vocal about, you're going to abort this baby, right? Men who are forcing or coercing, or however you want to put it. Um, do you see, a pretty even split, or do you see, like, how does that work with the men that come into the St. Joseph retreat?
It's a pretty even split. We deal with men who insisted on the abortion and now regret it. We deal with men like me all the time who just said, "Okay, I obviously don't have any say in this," who surrendered their ability to do anything about it. We get men who fought it fiercely and still lost. And we get men who never knew about it until it was over with. We deal also with men who maybe haven't actually lost a child of their own, but they helped drive the woman to the abortionist, or gave her money to help get it done, or even supported her decision as a friend and regret having done it now. We also reach out to men who've married a woman with an abortion in the past, whether they have one or not, because when two are made one, when you get married, it means that makes your abortion trauma community property. So we deal with all kinds of men. We one time even dealt with a man who came to us because his parents continually told him, "We were going to abort you. We should have aborted you." And he carried that all his life. And after his parents died, he still was feeling it, and he came to us, and we spoke with him and helped him. I wasn't sure he belonged with us at first, but then we realized that abortion, even just the threat of it, can really seriously affect a man's life.
Yeah, and and for that young man, being around other men who are on one side of the abortion decision or the other can heal him in a way that, brings him understanding and humanizes everyone involved, to where, I mean, I can see how that would benefit him, even though that's not what the retreats are designed for. I went to California in January, and I filmed with live action, and it was a really unique um, way that they did it. On my side of the table was myself and another gentleman who lost his son to abortion against his wishes. On the other side of the table were two moms who had had abortions against the wishes of the father. And as I reflect on that experience, I didn't really know what I was going to get out of it. I wasn't really doing it to get anything out of it myself. I was doing it to try to help the cause. But um what ended up happening was, I don't remember what I said, but I must have been saying something about not being sure, what could I have done differently, right? What could I have said differently? What concerns could I have addressed that could have prevented the death of my child? And one of the women stopped me and said, nothing. She said, my child's father was an amazing man, was an amazing Christian, supported me, and was going to be there, and everything was going to be okay. And I still made the decision. And she said it much more gracefully than I'm repeating it, and in a way that really touched me. And I tell that story right now because sometimes we find healing in the places we least expect, because that's not why I was sitting there at that table. Um, you know, that that's not what I expected to happen. And that's not even something I had thought about as far as something that I could have benefited from being told. And so even though somebody may not fit into the bucket that you've created the retreat for, it's amazing how allowing that conversation to happen can really help someone to heal. Because what a horrible experience, like what horrible parenting, like horrible mothering, horrible fathering, to say that to your child, and to say it, over and over and over again. And that's, I mean, you're just saying, I wish you
Yeah,
were
it was.
dead.
Yeah, it is, and it's heartbreaking. His was a heartbreaking story, and we made room for him because of that. The only thing abortion produces is pain and loss. And for every man who's involved in an abortion, regardless of his connection with it, the pain is real and the loss is real. But fortunately now, the healing is real too. There are places you can go to deal with this. Right now, Project Joseph is in 2 dioceses. It's in Dallas, where it originated 11 years ago, and there's one in Indianapolis. One of our men who had come to us flew in from Indianapolis to partake of it, and decided that he wanted to take it back to the archdiocese he had up there. And I went up and I trained his team, and he's doing it there now, pretty much independently. It's more like a franchise than anything else. But he's doing a great job with it. I check with him from time to time, and I'm hoping to get Project Joseph into more of the country. I mean, we've had men come to us from Florida, from Louisiana, from Alabama, Arkansas, Oklahoma, all over Texas. Had a man fly in from Canada, wants to get on this retreat. So you know the need is there. They're flying into Dallas for it. They're hungry for that healing. And I want to have Project Joseph spread to dioceses everywhere. Right now, I'm working on getting it across Texas. I'm currently talking with the bishop of Tyler, who's a good friend of mine. He used to be here in Dallas as the auxiliary bishop, Greg Kelly, and he's been one of the best supporters we've had. He was a strong, strong supporter for Project Joseph and what it stood for. So I know he's going to want it in Tyler. And I'm talking with Fort Worth, with their Catholic charities there. They're the people who handle the Rachel's Vineyard in Fort Worth, and they want to bring something like Project Joseph there. And also, San Angelo has been interested in it, and down in Austin, we've got people who are wanting to do it. So I want it to go all over Texas, and from there, all over the country, and from there, all over the world, because it's such a strong need, and I need help doing it. I need help spreading the word about it, because if people don't know about it, there's nothing can happen with it. So I thank you today for this opportunity to tell everybody who's watching your podcast that there is such a thing as Project Joseph, and with any luck, it's coming soon to a diocese near you. But until then, you're always welcome here.
I like that. And it is so important for men to be around other men when talking about vulnerable things, right? And it doesn't always have to be about abortion. For anyone that may want to criticize the idea that men need a men's abortion healing retreat, the science is there to back that in any type of situation where we're talking about past trauma or regret or loss or of any kind, that men are going to connect with other men. We just connect with each other better than we connect, or more easily and more fully than we would connect with a woman, on these issues. And that's particularly true of abortion, where for 52 years, men have been told, you don't have a choice, you don't have a voice, you have no right to talk about this, you have no right to think about it, by women. So then why am I going to come forward and share? You're kind of going into the belly of the beast. Even though the women who would be facilitating a retreat are on your side, there's still that just like beaten in thing in the back of your head that says it's not safe for me to talk about how this has impacted me with women. And so doing it with men is amazing, and I'm so glad to hear that you're doing that.
Yeah, when my Rachel's Retreat experience, I was worried that the women there wouldn't want me there, that they would reject me, because after all, man is what got them in the problem in the first place. And if any of them had any resentment that way, it dissolved quick once they heard my story, because they told me they were actually glad to know that that abortion affected men, because a lot of their experience was, well, go get the abortion, get it over with, or I'm out of here. And some of them out of here anyway, that know that it meant something to some men out there. And so there is a place for men to share with women. They help us get in touch with our tender side. I heard it said yesterday that gentleness requires strength, because gentleness without strength is just weakness. But you have to have the potential for almost a danger in order to be gentle and to know what gentle is. Anyhow, I guess I should give some information for people who want
Yes,
to contact.
please. How can we support you? How can we find you? All the information you want to give us.
Okay. ProjectJosephDallas.org is our website. You can go there, and it will give you all kinds of information and ways to contact me, because I'm the primary gateway for Project Joseph in English. We do have it for Spanish also. We have two retreats a year, one in February and one in August. I'd love to have more, but we need more men to step up and say they need this for there to be more. We can reach me on our helpline, which is 469-720-CARE, which is CARE 332273. 469-720-2273. That rings in my back pocket. So I always have it with me. If I can't answer, it's because I'm either talking to somebody else or I'm sound asleep. In either case, leave a message, and I will get back with you as soon as possible. But if it rings and I'm awake, I will pick it up and talk to you. You can also email healing@projectjosephdallas.org, and I will contact you that way. We'll be able to speak. I'm glad to talk with you, either through email, through text, on the phone, and about finding out if Project Joseph is something that would be of help to you. And I have found almost no one that it wouldn't help. In fact, almost all the men who have come to Project Joseph have said that they got a lot out of it. Haven't had one say, "Man, that was a waste of my time," yet. And I'm grateful that I'm able to do that for men. And I don't do it alone. I have a great team. Most of my team has been with me since the beginning. We have new men rotate in on a regular basis so that we can help grow other teams. And call. Even if you just want to talk, I'm here to listen and share my experience with you and let you share your experience with me. And for some people, that is a very important thing. A lot of the men who come to Project Joseph have never told their whole story about their abortion to anyone until they sat around our little campfire and shared it with other men who knew what they were going through.
Sometimes even their spouse, I'm sure.
Sometimes, a man should be able to share that type of story with his wife. If there's anything that stands in the way of it, political things, I don't deal with political things. So I just know that God wants you healed. He wants you whole, and he wants you with him.
That's right. I like that. That's a great way to end, because that's so important. God wants you healed, God wants you whole, and God wants you with him. Reg, I really appreciate you coming on today. I appreciate you sharing everything about Project Joseph. I will include the email, the website, and that phone number in the show notes so that people are able to easily find it. And I look forward to talking to you again. Thank you so much.
I'm glad we made contact, Sean. Been wonderful talking with you and sharing this story. And I look forward to, as you say, talking again, because there's a lot of work for us to do.
That's right. All right. Thanks,
and
Reg.
we men got to stick together.
Yes, sir.